Hi guys, hope you're well. Welcome to everyone. It's Tuesday, which means it's the day I tend to do my kind of growth strategy roadmap podcast and live stream. And what I do every week, or at least try to do, is introduce you to some interesting people that have got some great stories to tell. Often it's people I know myself, and I do that because I like the genuine interaction with people. So although I get approached by people who want to be guests, often they just kind of want to plug stuff, which I'm not too kind of keen on. But what I do like to do is introduce you to people I actually know. We talk about some really interesting topics, often kind of revolving around business strategy, but it could be mental health, it could be business in general, it could be lots of different things. My guest today is no different. I've known Thor for probably about 8 to 10 years. I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring him in straight away and we'll just start the conversation because that's what it's all about. So, hi Thor, would you like to say hi to everyone?
Yeah. Hello. How's everyone doing?
Good. I must admit, I'm impressed by the bushiness of your beard as well.
Man, this is a COVID special. What happened is during lockdown, I cut my own beard, and then it came towards the end of lockdown, and my wife was not happy because I was looking like, I don't know, what's the boy called in Tintin? What's the Captain Haddock,
Yeah.
isn't it? And so I booked an appointment at the my local guy. I thought he was back to work. I turned up there all excited with this ridiculous, even bushier beard. And I'm messaging him saying, "Hey, where are you? I'm waiting outside," because you have to wait outside and get COVID escorted. And I get this message back saying, "Your appointment's next week." So this is me still working my own magic. But
Well,
yeah.
what I found quite funny is that every Sunday I do a recap of previous guests, like the best advice they've had. And because I started this in the middle of lockdown, my hair starts okay and it gets worse
Yeah.
and worse and worse. And then you go through probably about 5 to 10 weeks of self-cutting or my wife cutting it. And then actually about a month ago, I think touching into June or May, whatever it was, I started to get my hair cut properly. And it's funny just to see the transition that I guess 2020 will always kind of look back on. But I empathize. I think everyone's in the same kind of boat. So how's tricks? How you been? I haven't seen you for a while, actually.
No, it has been a while, hasn't it? I mean, you could say that with everyone, though, couldn't you? It's the strangest of times. But how did we meet? Because I think it was like a hustings for a general election, wasn't it?
Yes, so
You were,
it was an Aberdeen Young Professionals event, and
yeah.
neither of us are young or professional, but it was because it was on a hotel, and yes, it was a hustings event, and the lady actually went on to win, didn't she, for Aberdeen?
Oh, was it Mary Black, maybe?
I don't know what her name was. She
Well,
was
it was
lovely.
years ago. And it was shout out to Ross Jolly, who maybe
Yes.
might tune into this, but it would have been Ross and the Aberdeen Young Professionals that got me involved. But the thing that sticks in my head, I don't know if it was you or Sandy, I think it was, that was with you. One of you guys, when I came off stage, I'd been like facilitating the thing and grilling the politicians like they should be grilled. And one of you two, I don't know who it was, but one of you said something like, I was like Andrew Neil, but tougher. And I'm like, I've had that ever since. I've been like, yes, thanks. So I don't know if it was you or Sandy, but thank you, whoever it was.
So, would you like to tell people who you are, where you're from?
Yeah, I'll keep it minimal. So I'm Thor, and that is my real name, not my stripper name. It's one of those things. I had hippie parents, and I guess Dad thought it would help me fit in Shetland because they were English hippies that had moved up to Shetland to grow marijuana in peace and just bring up their kids in the middle of
Is
nowhere on a little
is that
island.
true, or is that just a joke?
No, that's absolutely true. 100% true. Um, but Dad thought it'd help me fit in. What he didn't know is people in Shetland, same as the rest of Scotland, tend to have pretty standard names. I mean, there is a strong Viking influence up there. They have their Up Fire Festival every year and everything. But, my friends were, Stuart, Martin, Alan, just standard names. So it didn't really help me fit in, but it's been a great conversation starter and I have no complaints. I still thank my dad, being 47 years old as I am, because, he could have given me a standard name and I would never have had this wild conversation starter. But no, what do I do? I'm not going to give some fancy pitch, and I'm not here to pitch anything. I'm a coach, and the thing that I enjoy the most is listening to other people, helping them express themselves, and that goes through my mental health counselling as well. That's kind of the through line for me. I've dabbled with various things over the years. I thought I wanted to do something else when I was first leaving school. I thought I wanted to be a soldier, but I'd have been a tragic soldier. I'd have been awful. I mean, as my wife says, I've got freedom issues, Steve. And I would have been like, well, should we shoot him? I don't think we should shoot him. No, I don't agree with that. Like, I would have been arguing the toss for shooting person I thought we should shoot. So no, I think what that was, though, that was like a defining value that I still have, which is the idea of, I guess, literally serving other people. I get really motivated when I see someone else come through in something, whether it be something physical they get better at, or whether it be something psychological they get a breakthrough on, or whether it be like a career win. If I get a WhatsApp from someone saying that they owned it at the interview, and then I get a week later saying they actually got the role, like that feeling of service to someone or to a team, I'm working on a pitch, that's what does it for me. So if I was going to describe myself in a couple of words, it would be freedom and service. Like, those are my two driving values.
It's quite funny this, because you're interviewing yourself.
What's that mean?
You're interviewing yourself. You're kind of setting up the question and answering it. No, it's good. It's I always appreciate people that aren't afraid to talk. A whole interview show wouldn't work if people don't talk. So no, it's cool. So
if I can rattle through any potential questions you might have, then I'm going to start interviewing you.
That's fine. You can ask me anything you want. We did promise, though, before we came on air, that because this goes on YouTube, it has to be child friendly. Even though I don't tick the box. Sorry?
Have I sworn already?
No.
Oh,
I'm just warning everyone else.
Really concentrating.
So normally, like, I think it's important to kind of go through people's backstory, just because a lot of my guests are business owners, entrepreneurs, or they've just been around for a bit and they've got a good story to tell. But then likewise, all of us have been at a point where we were 10, 12, 15, 18, 25, whatever, to kind of find our own way. And one of the things I always try and do is that I like to interview real people, not just, the rarely polished kind of people that you always see on stage. And actually, through that same token, actually going back and talking through someone's journey, my hope is that one day it will resonate to people from where you're from, just to kind of see, actually, there are people that do what I want to do, and I've seen their journey, and there's a path. And again, with the beauty of kind of YouTube, it even could be someone who's not in Scotland or not in England, they could be in India, but actually that's the beauty of it. So are you happy to kind of almost talk through, and I love your colourful cup, by the way.
My cup?
Yeah.
This is Mrs. H's cup, and it works better than, I've got a Starbucks travel cup. This is her dog cup. I don't know, it's probably from the garden centre. Phenomenally expensive, but works well. Thank you.
So what were you like at school?
I was if I look back on school, it was one of the biggest missed opportunities. Like, I would have been a little victim at school. I would have been, in fact, a good friend of mine later described me as a social invertebrate, as in I just didn't have a social backbone. I didn't get it. And partly it could have been being brought up out in the wilds and maybe not having that level of social engagement.
So out of interest on that point, at what point did you come back to civilization, kind of, the mainland kind of thing?
If I was to show you out the window where I live now, you'd wonder if I do. Like, you could just see trees and hills for miles. I guess age 11, I left the little island, Papa Stewart it's called in Shetland. I left the island and I moved to the mainland of Shetland.
But 11 is quite late, you know what I mean? It's so understandable.
But that was me as a kid on my own. Like, my parents were still on the island, but we went away to school. So we were away for a couple of weeks at a time. But in terms of what I was like at school, yeah, just a real missed opportunity. In fact, that's probably one of my drivers now in terms of helping other people express themselves, is probably a missed opportunity feeling from my own school time when I definitely didn't express myself well. And I kind of took on a bit of victim status. I maybe got a wee bit bullied as an 11, 12-year-old, but probably most kids do. But I kind of let that live with me at the time.
Okay.
Whereas looking back on it, if I just engaged and got involved in the banter rather than taking it too seriously, I think I had a lot better time. So no, I've got no complaints about my schooling, but yeah, not one of my finest hours, that's for sure. Yeah, glad to get out of school in the end, I would say.
Because one of the things that I've seen with a lot of guests is, I know it's almost true with myself, is that I was always good at school, but because I was never picked up as being short-sighted until I went to uni, I'd always sit at the back of the class because that's where the cool kids sit. And I was always good at my work, but because I couldn't see the board properly, I'd lose interest and therefore be disruptive. And it's the same kind of thing that, ironically, that in some ways you think I could have got better grades, but actually almost I think it's that drive to achieve something, or the feeling that you didn't achieve what you could have, is probably what burns the fire now. And I think I see that a lot, because obviously I interview people every week now. So actually I think in some ways a lot of entrepreneurs have that trait.
Yeah, it's probably a fair point. I guess you can let these things define you in a negative way, or you can try and find a positive out of them. So I suppose we're just finding a positive, because you could just say, well, it was wasted time. And you could say that about a startup or whatever as well, couldn't you? Or you could say, well, X, Y, Z. So, yeah.
So you went through school, and then what did you both want to be when you grew up? And then what did you actually kind of go into?
So, yeah, as I said before, I thought I wanted to be a soldier, but I had a lucky escape because I tried to get into the Marines. I passed like a basic selection course. I tried twice. Second time I passed. First time I failed just outright. Second time I passed, but they said they wouldn't give me a scholarship for university, which is what I was looking for. And then by the time I'd finished university, my eyesight had failed a bit to some degree. I was short-sighted too. So that was the end of that. Basically, they didn't allow any kind of laser surgery in those days.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get in because of that. But as I say, lucky escape for both sides, because I don't think I'd have been a good soldier.
What did you do at uni?
Well, a bit of a blend. I ended up with a history degree from Stirling, but the units that I did, the way they blended it, there were teaching units. So I did some teaching experience. There were some economics units, which I really enjoyed, and actually some religious studies as well, which was genuinely fascinating. Learned about new religious movements from America, learned all about Waco, Texas. We had an American lecturer, Mary Maggard, I think it was, probably one of the best teachers I've ever had, actually. Really brought it to life. And yeah, so I ended up with a history degree. But I think it's fair to say that university, I still hadn't grown into my social self. Late developer, hadn't learned my lessons from high school yet. So I think it's fair to say, I didn't.
I don't know if everyone thinks that, but almost I was the same. Yeah. So I felt I didn't really become myself, as in really kind of understand who I was and who I wanted to be and stuff, probably until my third year at uni. And, you know, that was where, compared to some people would come to uni at 18, I say fully polished, but they had just a different upbringing. And I think it's important that, you know, people develop at different times, if that makes sense. And then it's almost, it can be a weird stage, because I remember in the halls that I was in, there was a guy from my school there. So actually I knew someone, but actually the first night at uni, we went to loads of different house parties when kids were allowed to get drunk. And it was just, you would see all these people from different backgrounds and cultures and whatever. And actually you remember in some way, like, people can be horrible. You know, you had people just being nasty and bitter, and it's a real kind of learning curve very quick.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change going to uni, even though obviously I kind of use some of the stuff now, but it was just, I think it's a good rite of passage that everyone goes through in a different way, but I think there is kind of value in it. So then what did you do post uni?
So I had a career crisis. That's a definite career crisis, which to be fair, gives me empathy for a lot of the people I work with now who are in career crisis for various reasons. I mean, a lot of them are in career crisis because COVID's come along and swept away their otherwise superb career. But for me, as I said, I thought I was going to join the Marines. That didn't happen, couldn't happen. So I was like, what do I do? I could go back to Shetland, but that felt like losing. It just felt like that would be a loser thing to do. I mean, it would have been fine, but that was the psychology. So I moved to Aberdeen because my brother lived there and worked offshore for an operator, Shell. So he had a flat here. Not here, I'm not in Aberdeen, but he had a flat in Aberdeen. And I just said, can I come and live with you for a few weeks while I work out what I'm going to do? But it was a really tricky time. I would have been, 2021. And he actually convinced me to go and sign on what was then called the dole. He said, look, I've paid my taxes working offshore, because he earned reasonable money. And he said, you go and get some of my taxes back. And I didn't know any better. So I said, well, okay, because I didn't have a job. I had a wee bit of savings. So I went and signed on, and I signed on for a couple of weeks. And man, it was soul destroying. Like that feeling of purposelessness and not knowing what I was going to do, even though I did have some money. As I said, I'd saved some money. It was just brutal. And looking at these mainly pretty crappy jobs, to be honest. And yeah, it was that was an eye opener for me. That was probably where I started to grow up a bit, was after uni, because you come out of that kind of bubble. I mean, I'd done some roughy-tufty jobs through uni. I'd worked with the bin men, driving diggers and picking up rubbish and stuff like that. So it's not like I'd been cosseted, but yeah. So that was what happened. I came out of university and just literally didn't know what to do, and realized I just need to get some kind of job here. I mean, I need to do something. And so I just went out and looked for anything I could get. The first actual job I got after university was actually a door security job. And it was weird because back in those days, I mean, I I used to be fit and strong, and I used to be a fighter, etc. So to me, it seemed like a natural thing to do, just as a part-time thing. But it was actually at the student union, and it was a new company had come into town, and they had some kind of training program. Now, I don't think, I might be wrong, but most door companies and bouncers didn't get trained in those days. This would have been, I guess, was it the late 90s, 96, 97? But they put us through a training program, and it was some ex-army guy. And I kind of resonated with a lot of it. And the idea, again, of service kind of came in. I know people assume that doormen are just there to batter people and chat up girls or whatever. But to me, a big part of it was actually trying to look after the people in the venues, and also to look after the other guys and girls in your team, because we had plenty of door women as well. And I really enjoyed that. I actually really enjoyed that job. I got a lot out of it, and I'd like to think I gave a fair bit to it. But that was a part-time job, so I was looking for something else. And I naturally trained a fair bit at that time, so I ended up getting a gym instructor job in a probably the busiest Aberdeen gym at the time, the Warehouse. And that's sort of where the first entrepreneurial thing happened to me. I mean, in danger of interviewing myself again here, Steve, feel free to jump in.
No, go for it.
So what happened really is, it's not so much that I decided to launch my own kind of venture. I was working, basically a minimum wage job in the daytime as an instructor, and then my door job at night that was better paid. And I was, that was pretty busy, because I would start at 6 a.m. in the morning, and a lot of nights I would finish at 1 a.m. So I wasn't getting that much sleep. I was really highly occupied physically. But after a while, not long, I'd only been there a few months, I think. And I had one of my instructor clients say, "Oh, could you personally train me?" And I'd seen some articles about personal trainers, one in particular stuck in my head, and I'd kind of thought it might be a cool thing to do. So I realized pretty quickly that the pay rate, if you like, a PT, even back then would have been, I don't know, £25 an hour, whereas I was on £5 or £6 an hour daytime rate as an instructor. And so I did the extra training, etc., required, and started just taking on my own PT clients as well as working as an instructor at the gym. And that was how my first kind of mini entrepreneurial venture got started. It was because people were asking me, people were saying, "Could you PT me? So yeah, you've put me through the gym's induction program, but I want to work with you longer term." So yeah, that's kind of how I actually got started in anything you could call entrepreneurialism. I don't know whether we should use that word, but you know what I mean, like in your own little venture. Yeah.
No, cool. I always quite enjoy when people go through a journey, and actually you don't know the path that you're going to end up on. So you go and with the best of intentions that you try something, and if it works out, you pivot, and then you keep changing. So, because when we first met, I think you had Thor Holt Limited, which was pitch and presentation training. How did you go from doing the PT to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, so I guess I can't remember the exact dates, but like in my later 20s, I had another, you could call it a career crisis, but it was more positive. I just somehow got into kind of personal development, reading and things. And through that, I'd found coaching, as in more like life coaching. And I ended up getting my own coach for a while. And I kind of went through a process of just having that proper consideration of what I might actually like to do now. Obviously, I didn't get into the Marines. I wasn't going to be doing that. I'd fallen into working on the door, and I'd fallen into gym instructing and PT. So what about if I was intentional? Like, what would I actually then do? I guess was the question. And I came up with some howlers, like I thought I could be a rock star or a pop star or something, but there was a slight challenge there in that I couldn't sing, or not particularly well. I thought about acting, and I wasn't so foolish as to think I could just go and be an actor. I went and joined an amateur dramatic group locally and did various plays and things, and then started applying for drama schools, and actually got into drama school in Sydney in Australia.
Wow.
And was over there for a wee while. It didn't work out particularly well. I loved Sydney, but school didn't work out for reasons that we won't go into in case somebody sues somebody. But it was a fantastic experience, and I ended up doing a 1-year kind of post-grad professional acting training in London. And I still do bits and pieces of acting. I do corporate stuff. That was a crucial part of the journey, though, because then going away, doing my acting training, then getting an agent. I got a pretty good agent, actually, but she was based up in Edinburgh. So I moved back from London with my then fiance, who I'd met in the meantime. And we moved back up into this part of the world, like Aberdeenshire. And from there, basically anyone who's been involved in acting will tell you, you don't instantly jump in and start earning a full-time living. That's just not the way it works. Supply and demand says, it's a very oversupplied profession. So I was getting bits and pieces of work through my acting agent, but I needed to go back to the personal training. And I realized I needed to promote the personal training a bit more than I had before, because times had changed. There were more personal trainers around by now. When I'd done it, when I first started, there was just a handful of us in the whole city. And now there were tons of PTs, you know. So I asked somebody in the gym, a guy called Bob Keeler, who some people watching might have heard of.
For the people who don't know who he is, do you want to just give some context?
Okay, so Bob, he has been more recently, he was like the chairman of Scottish Enterprise. He's a very successful, what I'd call a real entrepreneur, not like me, but he's been involved in management buyouts, building and selling major companies.
Because it was Wood Group, I think, where I knew him from.
Wood Group, yes. Wood bought his company, PSN. So yeah, Bob's a phenomenally successful entrepreneur and a great mentor. So what happened is basically I asked Bob for some advice. He did better than that, Bob being Bob. He threw me one of his B-team speaking opportunities. Basically, a charity in Glasgow needed a keynote speaker in a week's time. So I'd asked about public speaking to promote my business, my PT business. He said, I can do better than that. He sent me this email with something like Thor's challenge in the headline. And it was to speak at this thing in a week's time. I was like, oh my God. Because I'd had one previous experience of public speaking and had found it really scary. And he didn't just drop me right in it. He gave me some structure. He gave me some old notes from a course he'd been on, coffee stain notes. And I went away and worked something up. And then he pressure tested me on the day. I went down to Glasgow with my wife and my kid, and I presented it. And it went pretty well. I mean, it could have been better, of course. But I kind of felt it was a transformative process, and I got more and more into speaking. I did various kind of B-team gigs for him, things he couldn't do because of diary clashes, started getting some of my own gigs, started running some of my own little workshops. And one of the common denominators, Steve, was that I was getting asked by like universities, for example. Bob and I would go and deliver something together by this stage, and universities would ask me to come back and just work with the students around confidence and confidence to present.
Okay.
I guess it's back to that service thing and just loving to see other people come through. You know, when I was a PT, I would teach like a menopausal housewife to throw a left hook that could drop a doorman. And that would give me a great feeling. And it's the same thing when you can help someone get past their nerves and present well in an interview, or, I don't know, a pitch team that's never won any business to go out and win business.
Exactly.
Just a great feeling.
Because I used to get something similar from sports coaching, because I'm a qualified basketball coach. And even, I'm actually not going to do it from now on just because I'm too busy. But actually, even say last season, you've got a lot of juniors coming through that are 16, 18, whatever. You know, very, very good. But they just need a bit of confidence. And I love the kind of seeing people develop and go on. So no, I do kind of understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, you get that then. I mean, for me, it's the same. It's exactly the same thing. The physical and the psychological, it's all part of the same thing. So often I'll be trying to bring out that energy. Like if I had someone like you, and let's say you were really nervous, which I'm sure you're not, but if you were really nervous as a presenter and I found out you were into basketball, one of the things that I might do is just play around with you in a creative session earlier on and just get you literally bouncing a basketball while you're delivering the opening of your presentation, for example. Just try to bring through that energy that you use in another part of your life in a natural way to you. Because so I've done that with people with golfers, all kinds of things.
But one of the things that I think works is actually I had a big event that I was running a week ago, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago now. And it was on the drive there, it was for a really big client, quite a big deal. What I don't know which book I got it from, but it was all to do with actually how if you're feeling pressure, it's because what you're doing matters. And what that does, it means that you've reached a certain point where people care about what you do and you're doing something, again, that matters. And that's why you feel the pressure, as opposed to anyone could coast and do stuff which is a breeze. But it's almost to embrace it and really kind of, go for it. So I kind of get what you're saying. And then, so how did that evolve into the business?
So I actually think it was probably Bob's fault again. I think I was on a train journey with Bob, come back from, I think it was Edinburgh. We'd been at Heriot Watt maybe. And I think he said to me, it could be a business in this for you, because I was doing it at that time and I wasn't getting paid for a lot of that stuff I was doing. In fact, most of it I wasn't. I was just doing it because it was interesting and fun and fulfilled the value of service and helped people express themselves. And there were bits and pieces that were paid. And he just kind of put that idea in my head. And from there, I think the first thing I did, it was a while ago now, the first thing I did was kind of go out and reach out to some people I already knew. I think I invited 20, 21 people, hired a room at a local hotel, kind of put together my material, bearing in mind everything I'd done with Bob and also my own reading, because I did a lot of reading around the topic too. And of course, I was experimenting myself and with other people. And I did some kind of, I can't remember the title of it, but it was to do with kind of confident presenting, basically. And I did this event, and I got the feedback from the 21 people. It was, if I remember, a particularly brutal year, though, because I think it was maybe 2010, and I'd had swine flu, and then I had pneumonia off the back of the swine flu.
These bird-based flus have come back.
Oh, man, I was just broken. So I do remember running this event, but I'd pre-planned it, so I didn't want to cancel it, and I was really probably lower energy than the natural Thor energy, that's for sure. But yes, that's kind of how it kicked off. And then from there, a lot of it's word of mouth. So I'll get introductions from people who know the kind of projects I like to get involved in. I don't tend to, obviously not with lockdown, but even before that, I was doing less and less of the kind of face-to-face work and more working with individuals or small teams and more kind of remote work. So for a while, I was doing a lot of flying around bits and pieces in Europe and America and so on and down in England. But yeah, it just kind of grew over the years. And I guess you could say it's a combination of the PT, so bringing out people's physical energy, as we were discussing, and the acting, because I help people bring a level of performance kind of discipline to a preparation for a pitch or an interview, which is kind of with an actor's mindset. It's not that I'm not trying to get people to learn scripts or anything necessarily. But yeah, that's kind of how it all combines together.
Because on that topic, a former boss of mine, and I wasn't his biggest fan all the time, but the one thing that he would do, and he'd do it very well, is that if he had a big talk coming up, we would actually sit in his office and we'd run through it and we'd practice and we'd do it again. And, we'd think, okay, who's the audience? Who are we trying to talk to? So we might play up certain things or not and change the language. But it was practice. And it's, that's something in the past kind of 2 years or so I've really kind of picked up and, I really take to heart. So, I get it. I think it's good. And then
practice with humor, though. I like to keep it light.
Yes. Yeah.
Because one thing I hated from acting days was when certain people just took themselves too seriously. It's fine to take the process seriously. And it's fine to take the play or whatever it is you're doing seriously. But people who take themselves too seriously, that does my head in. So yeah, there has to be some banter in it. That's for sure. I kind of vet my clients now. I have a pre-working call and I check the banter quality, which is ironic considering I couldn't handle the banter myself at school.
Because I was going to ask you that, because obviously because in the past you've done sales training and that kind of pitch training as well. How much of it do you think is patter and talking and enthusiasm that, again, it is quite hard to teach if you don't have it?
I'm going to say, for me, I know I can be a bit bubbly, but I honestly think listening is more powerful than patter, especially these days. Who wants to be pattered at? I mean, most people would rather be listened to. Like if it's really good quality listening, that would be, if there was only one thing someone could focus on to sell themselves into a role or whatever, being the best listener that came into the interview, or the best listener in terms of listening to the client's challenges before you pitch them. Okay. That would be the winning point. So no, I'm not a big believer in patter as such. I mean, banter, yeah, but what I mean by banter is like take the mickey out of each other in the preparation process. I don't mean taking the mickey out of the client.
So as a seamless segue, how's that transitioned into what you're doing now?
Kneeling on the floor trying to fix my dodgy old man's back. Okay, so what happened, basically lockdown caused just a shift in what I focused on. So I guess pre-lockdown, it would have been maybe 70, 80% working with companies on pitches and so forth. And maybe 30% was kind of career coaching stuff and helping people land roles or kick butt in interviews. And just through lockdown, naturally, that's just shifted over, and it's probably pretty much the opposite, like 70% career, 30% corporate. So I've still got some corporate pitch work on the go right now. Still enjoy that. People are still getting value from that, but it's just naturally moved around. And from that, that's caused me to launch the Career Goldminder site, because I just was getting a little overwhelmed in terms of numbers of people. And I wanted to give some kind of stuff up front that people could check out and get some value from, and actually try some of my ideas in terms of how to sell themselves. So I set up Career Goldminder, and I've had help with that. Mike Watson built that site. And so that's kind of how it's transitioned. So we're looking to create, that's kind of like you could say like a software as a service site where people can go and get like the free Captain Your Career checklist, kind of get them started on looking for roles and kind of get themselves organized. And then there's a video course, which is, I think, 15 quid at the moment, which is about exploring your career history and learning to sell your value, but in a kind of conversational, story-driven way, rather than feeling like you have to go in and pitch yourself.
Because I think
that's kind of where I'm at now in terms of the focus.
Because one of the things which I think is good about that, and I talk about it with a lot of different guests in some ways, it's a way to get people into the Thor ecosystem at a lower price point. Because every business should have an ecosystem where you start with some stuff which is free, and we'll touch on social media and stuff in a second. And then actually, but if they want the full Thor experience, it is more expensive, but actually, that's how it should work. It, also allows you to grow a business. And I'm intrigued where you're walking to, but I'm enjoying it. Okay.
I'm just walking from my dodgy old man's back. I'm now standing on the hearth of the wood burner. There we go. Am I still center screen?
Yes, you're fine. And you're still live, by the way, so people are watching this. Anyway, so tell me about...
I won't light the fire, Steve, I promise. I'll stay with you.
So tell me about MIT.
Oh, yeah, that's a funny one. So basically what happened is, I can't remember the year, but years and years ago, I scored this piece of pitch work with an oil company, and they were based in Wyoming. And myself and the main guy who was running this pitch in the Bakken shale play, big pitch worth many, many tens of millions of bucks to them. And we agreed we were going to meet halfway. Well, halfway between Wyoming and Aberdeen is actually the eastern freeboard of the US, pretty much, in terms of flying time. So we agreed to meet in Boston. But I knew something about this guy. I knew he was a little unreliable because I'd worked with him before. So the company were going to be paying me for my time and effort and expertise. But I thought, out of the 3 days or whatever I booked with him, I'll be lucky if he shows up for one day. So I started Googling, looking up Boston and seeing what's in Boston. I found out MIT was there. And so I sent a pitch email, which I used like a presentation structure to design. I didn't just send a random email. And I sent it to a decision maker who I discovered at MIT, the entrepreneurial bit of MIT. Basically, I just pitched him the idea of me coming and speaking to their entrepreneurial students on the topic of presenting and pitching. I thought, well, I might as well do something useful while I'm there and get some interesting new connections. So I didn't pitch him in it. It wasn't to be paid or anything. It was just to basically do what I'd been doing with Bob at Scottish universities, but to do it for MIT for free because I was going to be in the town anyway. Went over, he agreed. It was a video interview with him and some of his staff before they let me come. They didn't just agree after the email, but it was the email, then the interview with them. So I went over, delivered that, and right enough, the guy was there literally one day out of the 3. So I was correct. I won't name check him because you never know, he might see this. And that was how it started. And after that, I was involved a few times in there. They had like a summer accelerator program. Oh, cool. They had businesses coming from all over the world. And I was involved in a couple of them. That was really all there was to it. And one day when I was leaving MIT to nip back to the plane, back to Boston Logan and fly home, Bill Owlett, the kind of head guy there, brought me into the office, and there were some of the other team sat around, and he said, his words were, "Thor, my favorite Viking." He said, "I'm going to make you an EIR." And I genuinely was like, I have no idea what that is, but I didn't want to say it. So I was like, oh, thanks, Bill. And on the flight out, on the drive out in the taxi, I was looking up EIR, like, what the hell is that? And I did wonder why the other kind of team members were looking at me a bit funny, or looking at him a bit funny. And yeah, so apparently it means entrepreneur in residence, and it's a great honor. Now, I left it on my LinkedIn profile for a year, and then I just ended it because, as far as I can tell, it's just like one of those designations. I'm not sure what it really means. And I guess he just gave it to me to say thanks for all the stuff I'd done for them. And, I got a lovely testimonial from one of the key people there that people can find on LinkedIn. And yeah, it was a great experience, but I haven't been there for years and years and years. So it's not something I talk up or kind of.
What's interesting, though, is almost from a sales and credibility point of view. Obviously, a lot of people I kind of know and work with are people that are setting up their own business. Yeah. And there's one lady in particular who's from a media kind of background, and credibly and rightly so on her website, she can put, because she's worked at The Guardian, the BBC, Reuters and some others, and it's that credibility piece that being able to use logos and drop things in just adds credibility to Thor that you wouldn't otherwise have. So I was always really impressed with it, and it is something that you should use, as and when, just because it is what it is. It's valuable, and to a business owner who's trying to, establish themselves and do whatever they're trying to do, there is kind of great value in it. So I just wanted to touch on it because I'd never heard the backstory. But no.
Well, I mean, for me, the real value in that story for myself too is the idea of just offering to do something off your own back, offering to provide value up front, because that's where that, as you say, an element of credibility came from. It all started with you just offering them something. So,
because I think the real thing which I really like from that story is the fact that you had an arrangement, you had something going on, you thought I might have some free time, so off your own back, you thought who's there? I'm gonna approach them. I'm gonna sell, and it's not everyone does that. Not everyone has the kind of the thoughts or the ideas to even approach that kind of thing. So I think there is huge value in even just trying stuff. That likewise, when I used to come up to Aberdeen, if I knew that I had 6 meetings, I'd try and fit in the 7th, and I'd just drop in to say, actually, I'm going to be here. Can we have a chat or grab a coffee? There's no big deal. But actually, it's going that extra mile, because you never know. We're still friends, I guess, 8-10 years on. And it's always interesting.
I like that, Steve. The one more, just one more phone call, one more meeting. No, you're right. It's good. I like it.
So with the latest Boris announcements, or I guess you're Nicola Sturgeon, but it's the same thing. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people looking for work at the moment. I know a lot of them. One of my clients is a recruitment company, so I see both sides of it. What kind of top tips, you can be 3, it can be 1, it can be 5, would you give people, both, I guess, from a mindset point of view, which is arguably the most important thing, because let's face it, it's a crappy time. I've been there when you're not worried, you are worried because you don't know what's going to happen next, or if an opportunity comes up or not. But then actually, if you do get a chance for interview, what are your kind of top tips?
I think my top tip comes from have you got time for a quick story to explain?
Yeah,
okay.
Always.
So my brother that I mentioned was working offshore when I first went to Aberdeen. And then a wee bit later on, he'd always wanted to be a pilot. He actually spent 50 grand of his own money, trained as a pilot, wanted to stop working offshore. But when he eventually got through training as a pilot, he graduated with his commercial qualifications, having spent a lot of his life savings on it. He graduated into the teeth of what was like an airline recession. There were no jobs. So he'd sent 50, 60, I don't know how many applications out, and was getting no response. And I said to him, even back then, this is before I was actually a career coach, but I said to him, well, bro, you're not getting any answers from these big companies. Let's just get you in the door of a local company. Let's just go see them. So got the suit on. I just started driving him around local companies. He went into one, handed in his CV, had a confidence boosting conversation, went to the second one.
Airline companies or just any company?
Yeah. No, airline companies.
Okay.
But, so don't worry, there's only 2. We're at the final one. So basically he goes into the second one. I fall asleep in the car, warm day. He comes out, he's got a job. Now, what happened is he walked in, he got speaking to the operations person that was on the desk, small company, so you can get to decision makers more easily. She said, the the owner of the company happens to be up from London. Do you want to meet him? So they got chatting, shared passion, shared enthusiasm for aviation, genuine, because he's always wanted to be a pilot, So they get chatting, and after a while, the guy's like, have you got your qualifications? And then, do you want a job? Now, bear in mind, airline recession, he's applied for tens and tens and tens of jobs with the big guys, hearing nothing back. Get your suit on, just start walking in places. Now, I know it sounds too good to be true, but it's a genuine story. That is what actually happened. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's why I called the free resource that I have over at Career Goldminder is called Captain Your Career. And that's why it's from his story. It's that idea. And it's the psychological tip you talk about, man. People have just got to captain their own career. They've got to just choose that they're going to go out and find that or make that thing happen. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not going to patronize people. I know it's not easy. I know it's never been so competitive. But what's the alternative? Just to sit and apply and apply and apply and hope for the best. I mean, sure, you should be doing that, but you should be finding ways of getting yourself noticed in front of people. And I don't want to give some kind of general advice and say everyone should show up at people's doors. It's COVID times. You might not be welcome, but you got to find a way to differentiate yourself. And just applying for the same jobs that 500 other people are with the big name companies, that's probably not it.
Because one of the things when people have asked me about options and careers and different things, is almost that with a lot of them come from bigger company backgrounds where they do a role as one of 100 or 500, and they pitch themselves as that particular role, or that's what their skill set is. And my point always is that I spent the last, 5 to 8 years in smaller companies, that actually you might be a senior engineering project manager that in theory runs £10 million projects, whatever it is. And my point is, the skills that you will have, you could arguably be operations director or even MD in a £2 million company. And it's almost where people often undersell themselves, or they just don't even think of how they could pivot.
Yeah.
And it's true, and you see it all the time. And then one of the big ones that when I talk to kind of freelancers that sell themselves for, say, marketing or whatever, the challenge you've got is that if you sell marketing support, if the company already has something in place, it's an instant no. But my point to them always is, well, actually, what other skills do you have? Are you good at admin, organizing stuff, leadership, whatever? Because in theory, every company needs, or everyone's got different challenges. And the point is, if you can speak to the owner and say, look, what are you struggling with? I'm a safe pair of hands. Can I help? That is a good sales message for almost anyone. And it's almost just thinking outside the box, that you don't have to just apply for jobs that come up. You can almost, proactively approach people.
Yeah, if all you're doing is applying for jobs that come up, you are hugely limiting your chances. I would definitely say that. I mean, in that Captain Your Career free PDF thing, it's a checklist. It's set out like a pilot's checklist. That's the conceit of it, if you like. So there's like 21 points on the checklist. But one of the things that I talk about is front foot approaches and just finding ways in. And whether it be with a letter or whether it be with a call or whether it be actually showing up once COVID rules apply, I mean, having the balls to just do something different like that, going to make you stand out. And yeah, you might have to eat humble pie a bit. I mean, my brother went from, 70 or 80 grand a year offshore to 18 grand a year for his first pilot's job. Now, he soon recovered that, and that's a whole other story and a whole other set of lessons, but we won't go there just now. But yeah, I mean, there are going to be sacrifices. So yeah, I don't patronize job seekers by saying it'll be easy. It's not easy. I totally get it. And it can feel like a really lonely, really depressing, really tough place. And I'm genuinely worried for many people this winter, man, because I think it's going to be a really long, cold, tough winter emotionally for people. And I'm really hoping the economy picks up next year. But yeah, having that Captain Your Career attitude is crucial, man, for people to get themselves through. I really think that it's got to be coming from your own head. You can't just wait for the people you're applying to send you a happy, yay, come to interview.
Yeah. It's not going to happen.
I mean, that's a shot in the dark. That's playing the lottery at the moment.
So it's not that we cleverly plan these questions, but this is seamless the way this is running through. So based on
genius as an interviewer, Steve.
But so on Saturday, it was World Mental Health Day. And, I wrote a post because actually I was sat in Costa Coffee because it was still allowed to go at the time. And it was almost where, so I started my own business last October. And I've realized earlier today that I've pretty much worked all year. I haven't had a break. And now it's to the point where I feel fatigued. I'm tired. I'm going on, but it's not easy every day. And someone commented yesterday on some social media that I'm one of the most enthusiastic people that they know. But it's like, it's now the whole lockdown and without going for a break and a holiday, it's starting to kind of get to me. And I don't know if that classes as mental health or not, but it was almost just that was what it is to me. But I know that you kind of volunteer for different charities and stuff. So I don't know if you want to just, talk about the topic or how you found things or the effect of COVID on people.
Give me a few potential angles there. I mean, the first thing is, for me personally, I don't see my mental health counselling as particularly separate to what I do that I happen to get paid for. Yeah. To me, it's still the same thing. It's still the same service value. It's still the same listening to people, helping them express themselves in a real way. So it's kind of a through line for me. It doesn't feel separated. But in terms of the COVID effect, yes, I hear it from my counseling clients, but I also hear it from my coaching clients. And it's that feeling of being devalued a lot of people are having right now, because they're either, if they're on their own business, they're knocking their pan in and probably not getting as much revenue. People losing their jobs, same kind of thing, where they're, of course, not feeling valued. So, yeah, it's going to have a massive impact on many, many millions of people's mental health. But in terms of people like you and me who are, ostensibly still doing okay, you've still got the kind of the lack of freedom and the feeling of maybe concerns, certainly in the earlier stages, the concerns over health. For me, I've found, and I've suggested it with and worked with some clients on it, it's like taking a mini break, like even just taking a few minutes of like deep breathing, like the Wim Hof breathing app, for example, is one I love, where you're literally taking 2 or 3 minutes out of your day just to take the focus right away from whatever emails or whatever, application forms, and just do that deep breathing and engage with the human being that you are and the flow of your breath. And again, I don't want, it might sound cliche, it's not meant to, it's not even that I'm doing yoga or something deeper, but just that engagement with yourself and with that kind of vital oxygen flow can be enough to kind of give you some mental respite, because your brain, when you're doing that breath hold Wim Hof technique, have you ever done it?
I don't know what it is, but I will Google it after this.
You need to have a shot of it. Wim Hof.
Okay.
I think it's just WIM and then HOF. There's a great documentary about him as well. But look him up, try the app. It's free, it's brilliant. And it's like a 3 or 4 minute, just total mental break in your day. You just lie down on the floor or whatever and just do the breathing exercise with his voice in your ears. You can't, when you're holding your breath for 2 minutes, you can't be worried about, finances or jobs, because you're just in your body, in your mind. It's incredible. So yeah, finding ways of taking mini mental breaks like that has been really powerful for me personally, and I've used that with certain clients as well. But also just expressing your rage or frustration or fears. And I know not everyone has someone that necessarily they live with that they can do that with, but just don't be afraid to lean on people, because you probably wouldn't be surprised, but there's a heck of a lot of people who do want to listen, do want to help. So please reach out. That would be my message on the mental health side.
Because why do you think it is that blokes especially find it difficult to talk about stuff like this?
Well, is that still the case? I guess it probably is to some degree. I think it's much better, Steve. I honestly do. We're probably just wired that way. I don't know. I'm not gonna pretend to know the kind of the biology well enough to know, but I think we're getting better. I really do. And I guess there's partly, and I know I've talked about banter earlier, there's maybe partly the fear that if you do open up, you're just going to get the Mickey ripped out of you. So there's maybe partly that, and that's, that can be a great thing at times, and sometimes that can be therapeutic, but, when it's really serious, I hope it's getting better. And if someone wants to reach out to me, hit me up with a DM. I have had people from, Finland, whatever, middle of nowhere, just send me a message and say, haven't read some of my stuff, and say, have you got 10 minutes? I just need to sound off about something. And if I can, I will. Cool. But I would encourage people to offer that for other people too, for people they know, because partly it's about showing your mates or people that you are open to that, and just saying, Bob, if you're whatever the guy's name is, or if you're struggling, Mark, give me a shout.
Yeah, cool. So I'm very conscious that you've got an appointment shortly, so we'll kind of start to wrap up.
That's why I'm wiggling around.
So one of the things that I ask all of my guests, and I think this is arguably the most important bit, and this is about sharing advice and just lessons learned and stuff. What's the best piece of advice you've ever had?
Best piece of advice I ever had. I think it would be a toss-up between get a dog and act first, apologise later, which my father-in-law gave me that advice. My wife hates it when I say that, but he did. He was a successful guy in his own right, commercial property guy, and he gave me that advice, and he's so right. Just try it. Act first, apologise later if you need to. So, that's my favourite. That's probably my favourite advice.
And get a dog.
But definitely get a dog too. Because even if Mrs. H throws me out, I can still get a dog.
And it is true that regardless of what happens with your career or whatever, the dog will always love you. As long as it gets fed.
Well, I was going to say, in the end, when everything gets really tragic, the dog can eat you. No, sorry, that was a bad joke.
And then the other question I ask is that if you were to give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Buy a property as soon as you leave school, chum. Man, if I could give myself advice, honestly, that would be it. I would say buy property. It's not going out of fashion.
But would you say that now as opposed to in the 1990s?
I'd still say it now, but I'd say investigate how to buy a property intelligently. I bought a property with, let's just say, very limited resources before. You don't have to buy it in the conventional way. I'm not pretending to be a property guru. I'm not. But that would still be my advice to my younger self. Yeah, to my 16 or 18-year-old self. Try and invest in property in some way. Yeah, that probably would be my advice. Pretty early doors. And get a dog.
And get a dog. Is the dog the theme, or just run through this? And then,
yeah.
So conscious of time and stuff. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we go?
Just thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it, and yeah, if there's anything I can do for you, let me know. You can maybe come on my podcast sometime if you fancy it.
I didn't even know you had a podcast.
That's because I've been keeping it quiet. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really here to plug anything. I know I've mentioned Captain Your Career, so if someone wants to check that out, I don't know if you put a link under this, but
I can do.
just connect me on LinkedIn if you're a connection to Steve's and we don't already know each other. That'd be great to connect. I post content most days. My most successful recent content was about emojis, but don't be fooled. I sometimes post helpful stuff as well. Yeah, the site is careergoldminder.com if you want to check out the Captain Your Career thing.
Because whatever happened to your thoughts, which you used to post when you were walking through the woods?
Those thoughts, well, you mean, well, I had a version years and years ago that were actually quite successful not in numbers of views necessarily, but a lot of business came from that. But more recently, I just haven't done as many videos. Actually, genuinely part of it is I start to get put off a wee bit because they seem to get slammed by the LinkedIn algorithm compared to a post. So my emoji post, I don't know, 33,000 views. A video that people love that gets a great ratio still might only get, I don't know, 4,000 views. And you just think...
Because I saw your post on this earlier today. And from a business point of view, it depends on what your goal is. So for instance, for my business, I do all of this to target maybe 10 people max. So I, in theory, go very hard on a niche audience and I just want depth and quality and stuff. So I almost don't mind if this only gets 10 views. Yeah. Because it's hopefully 10 quality views, and it's that balance of where you could do a post on emojis, but it's whether it sells the vision of, I guess you want the balance of the two. So you want the wide reach, but still have the depth that people can really understand who Thor is and what you do and stuff.
I totally agree, Steve. So yeah, it's not that I'm saying I won't do videos anymore because I don't get enough likes. I'm not a like junkie, genuinely. I'm not that bothered. I mean, of course it's nice if everyone likes your stuff. I'm not going to pretend it's not. But if I do a video post and it only gets 500 views, but I get a potential client or I get someone engage with me and say you really helped me have a better day or whatever, I was having a rough time, and yeah, that is more meaningful. So no, absolutely, I completely agree with you. To me, it's a blend. I mean, I would tend to try and do a video or two a week. Whereas in the old days, I used to do one a day. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to do that. And same with podcasts. I do them every week or every couple of weeks. And I know it's better to be regular, but I try to aim at an average of one a week for the podcast.
What's the podcast called?
Thor Holt Presents.
Fair enough. And what do you present?
People, usually, or just ideas, stories. It tends to be people.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm conscious of your back appointment. But it has been lovely to catch up. I know it's been a while, and we'll have a proper catch up at some point soon. Awesome. Good luck with the back. I will check out the podcast, and I'll put all the links to different career stuff underneath as well. I think especially now more than ever, it is important to kind of, tell people what support's out there and just, come across as real people as well. It's part of the reason why I was always keen to do video, that often if you write written text, people can take it multiple different ways. As often if you see someone talk on a topic, you can kind of gauge their real passion and what they're about and stuff as well. So cool. Well, I will let you go. Thanks for your time again. Thanks to anyone that watched, and hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.